Welcome back to Disco Elysium, the Ballad of Officer Superstar. As a reminder, we just cleaned out Placence, the book peddler, of all of her books and a couple of board games. And today we're actually going to go through and look at all of those things while we try to kill 6 hours and 43 minutes while we finish internalizing Wasteland of Reality. So let's get started. So we've got the board game Suzerainty, we've got the board game Whirl, we've got the Heimdallr Man from Heimdall book, and we've got the Man from Heimdall and the Devil Woman to read. We also had, those are the things we just bought from Placence. We also have a brief look at Infra-Materialism, which is our take-home reading for the Communist Book Club. And we have The Greatest Innocence. This other book here is Dick Mullen, and it's all fallen apart, and we already finished it anyway. Although we don't really know who did it, who killed the bad guy, who killed Charlie Spillane, I think the guy's name was. Why don't we start with a brief look at Infra-Materialism, a concise introduction to Infra-Materialism theory intended for a general audience. You can tell this particular copy has spent a lot of time in someone's back pocket.
The cover of this pocket-sized volume features a swirl of orange, yellow, and green. The title, A Brief Look at Infra-Materialism, is set in an authoritative yet approachable serif font. What an interesting color palette. It's vibrant, yet somehow leaves you ever so slightly nauseated. On the inside jacket flap, you find a brief summary. What is Infra-Materialism? A highly theoretical branch of Mazovian communism? A collection of mystical ramblings by a discredited revolutionary? Or possibly both? This brief look, TM, introduces readers to one of this century's most fascinating and misunderstood theories in a concise, jargon-free manner.
This feels like kid stuff. Is there no slightly longer glance TM series?
The back of the book contains 4 or 5 pages of primary and secondary sources, but you'd need access to a university library to find most of them.
Oh, I guess we're out of luck.
In other words, this guide is the only source you're likely to find. You turn to the table of contents. The guide itself is divided into several sections with seemingly esoteric titles like Effects of Plasm on Root Vegetables and Mental Projection and Transference. There's also a brief introduction about the life of Ignis Nielsen.
Okay, I'm going to make a few observations here. First of all, as a reminder, we have a couple of tasks that we need to do, including talk to Klaji and potentially the Delta Logistics thing without Kim. When we went to go talk to Klaji last night, she had gone out, so I'm not really certain how we're going to be able to talk to her without Kim. My hope is that we might just bore him to death by reading all of these books. Meanwhile, let's also recognize that as we begin to read, we're just standing here in the rain. So that's a little ridiculous. Anyway, let's read the introduction on Ignis Nielsen.
Known to his numerous admirers as the evangelist of the revolution, and to his even more numerous enemies as the apocalyptic Shrike, Ignis Nielsen remains one of the most controversial and fascinating figures to emerge in the years of the anti-centennial revolution, second only to Krasmazov himself. During his unparalleled life, he helped guide a revolution in one country and found a new state in another. Along the way, he committed some of the most notorious war crimes in an era famed for its atrocities.
Wow, that's quite the achievement.
He is your brother, a fellow doom prophet.
Okay, very nice, I guess.
And yet, his most fascinating contribution to history may be the most overlooked. His theory of ideological plasm, from which his followers and successors developed the school of communism known as Infra-Materialism.
Let's start reading the first chapter.
If you're like most people, you probably believe that your thoughts reside in your brain, right?
I do believe that my thoughts reside in my brain, although I'm not so sure, based on this game, that they are particularly happy to be just sitting there inside my brain. They tend to argue a lot.
That's not right at all. Thoughts don't exist in the brain. They float through the air. Your brain is but a fish swimming through them.
Right?
Wrong, at least according to Ignis Nielsen.
Okay.
As Mazov's devoted comrade and leading theoretician, Nielsen was responsible for developing much of the intellectual foundation of communism, but his interests and speculations were famously wide-ranging. During his final years in exile, he produced, among other things, an early guide to home brewing, instructions for raising revolutionary children, plans for a universal pictographic language, and a detailed materialist critique of Dolores Day's chess strategy.
Dolores Day's chess strategy? Like, that's something that was committed to the history books such that he could go and comment on it?
A true man of ideas, equal to any of the great DeLorean polymaths. But one subject he returned to time and time again was the fundamental relationship between thoughts and matter. We may yet discover, he wrote in his notebooks, that under certain exceptional circumstances, the proletariat's embrace of historical materialism may be so fervent that their beliefs take form in the world of matter as a kind of revolutionary plasm.
I guess I'm going to say whoa, because my first thought was whoa.
Whoa is right. What's more, Nielsen speculated that this plasm, when it becomes powerful enough, might begin to influence the material reality surrounding it. Hence the name, Infra-Materialism.
Huh. So thought as taking physical form, kind of like telekinesis if you could see it? I don't really know. Let's find out.
Unfortunately, Nielsen passed away before he was able to develop these initial ideas into a full-fledged theory. That work was left to subsequent generations of communist theorists. Building on Nielsen's basic insight, these theorists reached a startling conclusion that a sufficiently revolutionary state might begin to exhibit certain extra-physical effects based on the amount of plasm generated by its citizens.
Wait, so this isn't even Nielsen's theory, it's his followers' theory?
Correct, though certain particulars of the theory are commonly attributed to Nielsen himself. The evidentiary basis of those attributions has always been a point of contention between infra-materialists and their critics.
So these people are saying that if enough people just believe in communism, it will come true?
The actual theory is highly technical, but for the purposes of this brief look, TM, that's a fine working definition of the concept.
Thank you, TM.
That's because this is absolute idiocy, not even worth engaging with.
All right, thanks, Logic. You're super helpful there.
No. There's something here. You can feel it.
Yeah, I can feel it. We barely succeeded, wow. All right, let's hear about this extra physical stuff.
Infra-materialists divide the extra physical effects of the revolutionary state by the level of plasm required to achieve them. At the lowest, or first level, revolutionary plasm is believed to stimulate or invigorate matter without altering its essential property.
I don't remember what the business with the turnips was, so I guess I can't say that. How exactly does the plasm stimulate matter?
To take one example, during the revolutionary period, many communard farmers in Grad reported extraordinary yields of certain root vegetables, most notably turnips.
Yeah, so that explains the turnip situation.
The difference in these yields was simply too great to be accounted for by mere climate or soil conditions. The only reasonable explanation, infra-materialists argue, is the high level of revolutionary plasm emanating from the commune itself.
Seems like a bit of a stretch, but, maybe not to the true believers.
Even today, in parts of the SRV, there are collective farms whose root vegetable yields exceed those thought possible by capitalist agronomists. Who's to say the farmers aren't just cooking the books? Sounds like obvious SRV propaganda.
So I wonder what we should conclude from the fact that it's logic that seems to be in opposition to the Mazovian economics.
It's also been postulated that plasm may account for the remarkably full and manly facial hair observed on some communist males.
So we can choose to stroke our chin or not. Well, since we just shaved it, we're not going to do it. Don't. It's embarrassing.
Of course, infra-materialists argue that revolutionary plasm may stimulate human physiology in other ways as well. In fact, reports from the revolutionary period claim that the most radically devoted communards were able to engage in vigorous intercourse for up to 8 hours at a time.
That sounds like a Viagra scale problem where you should call your physician.
8 hours? There's no way. Your equipment would be mashed to jelly.
Yeah, it would, or at the very least be chafed.
Hyperproductive vegetables and ultra-horny communards are fine. But this theory hasn't quite gotten strange enough for you.
I agree. It needs to get much stranger.
And on that note, you feel like you've gotten the general idea of infra-materialism, enough to carry on a basic conversation at least. But if you'd like to go even deeper into some of the more speculative aspects of the theory, you could always read further.
I don't really feel like we have a choice.
Of course you want to go deeper. What else are you here for?
That is in fact true.
The book fits quite snugly into your palm. It would also fit comfortably into a jacket pocket.
Let's keep reading.
You flip forward a few pages until you come upon a chapter titled Mental Projection and Transference. When a community has achieved a sufficiently high degree of revolutionary fervor, infra-materialists believe that second-level effects may be observed. At this second level, certain hyper-revolutionary individuals may even develop the ability to extend their thoughts into material space and vice versa.
Wait, does that mean the communists can read minds?
According to infra-materialist theory, yes. Under suitably revolutionary conditions, that is. It's become something of a folk legend that during their final meeting, Nielsen and Mazov didn't speak a single word, preferring to sit in silence with their chamomile tea, reading one another's thoughts.
Check it out. The lights in the bookstore just went off. That's pretty neat. You know what? That's strangely beautiful.
One of the minor tragedies of the late revolutionary period is that few reliable accounts survive. Much of what we know of the communards' activities during this period come from memoirs and second-hand accounts, some only written down decades after the fact, and of dubious authenticity.
Okay, but it would be the first book written down decades after the fact that's of dubious authenticity, not by a long, long stretch. So why do these effects only work for hyper-revolutionary communists?
Because plasm has never been directly observed, the exact mechanism behind these effects remains entirely speculative. In other words, there's no evidence that any of this mind-reading stuff is real.
So logic is the wettest of wet blankets here.
Why are you getting hung up on mechanisms? Open your mind's aperture just a little wider. You're so close to true understanding.
All right, we're going to let it go.
This should be more than enough for a stimulating discussion. That said, if you're still yearning for more...
Oh, of course we are.
You must. Everyone knows. Books save their best parts for the end.
Books and video games, at least one can hope. Let's finish the book.
You breeze through the next several sections until you arrive at the final chapter, titled A Communism Above Reality. When a society's revolutionary fervor reaches the third and highest level, infra-materialist theoreticians have postulated that the laws of physics cease to be laws.
Cease to be laws? Then what do they become? Just advisory?
More like suggestions, according to some of the SRV's leading infra-materialists.
Isn't that what happens actually at the super small scale, like the quark level? Huh, that's cool.
Of course, it's impossible to say what exactly happens under these conditions. No known society has ever achieved the levels of revolutionary enthusiasm the theory seems to require.
Of course not. Of course not. That would be revolutionary.
Some infra-materialists have even argued that it might require more plasm than humanity alone may be capable of producing.
Wait, are there non-human sources of plasma?
In the SRV, there have been attempts to organize certain species of aquatic mammals, as well as a few of the higher corvids. But as of this writing, only human beings have demonstrated the intellectual capacity for revolutionary communism.
Or maybe only human beings have demonstrated the interest. Like dolphins probably just don't give a shit. Has anyone ever gotten close to reaching the third level?
There are numerous stories from Samara involving bandits or fascist mercenaries being levitated by farmers from the most ideologically advanced communes. Of course, few of these incidents have ever been rigorously investigated or substantiated. The form of these stories also recalls several well-known Samaran folk tales, in particular, the one commonly known as Clever Oleg and the Flying Magistrate. Among known attempts to channel third-level capabilities, the most well-documented is the curious case of Coalition warship Debutante.
Oh, I've got to know what that's about.
It concerns an interesting series of events that took place during the invasion of Revachol. As Coalition forces made landfall, a cadre of Nielsen's most fervent acolytes attempted to compress a Coalition-era static with their collective will. According to Communard law, these acolytes positioned themselves at the top of a redoubt just over the Bay of Revachol. From that vantage, they proceeded to visualize pinching Coalition warship Debutante between their fingers, a gesture believed to assist in the extra-physical materialization of their thoughts.
We can ask, why didn't they just get some high-powered Merc gear and tap our armor, but no, we're going to say, did it work?
The acolytes, along with the redoubt, were vaporized in an artillery strike before the process could be completed.
Maybe they should have gotten some armor.
Picture the lot of them, all standing with their fingers in the air 1 minute, the next reduced to a bloody mist.
Yeah, that's, well, that's plasm of a sort, I guess.
It's been said, though, that in the weeks following the battle, the captain of the Debutante noted an increase in incidents of crewmen striking their heads on unexpectedly low bulkheads. Of course, colorful anecdotes only scratch the surface of what infra-materialists believe may be possible in a truly third-level society.
And what would a third-level society look like?
Some have theorized that such a society would be fundamentally unrecognizable, lacking many of the institutions we typically take for granted in advanced societies, including organized governments, financial institutions, and law enforcement. Did that book just say there's no place for you in this future?
I guess it did. Oh, we could have passed. Oh, we missed by 1 point, and we took a morale hit.
Others have argued that people living under third-level conditions will be immune to such infirmities as hunger, disease, and mental illness.
That doesn't sound bad.
In some of his later writings, Nielsen himself speculated about the potential for an extra-physical architecture that disregards the laws of bourgeois physics and instead relies on the revolutionary faith of the people for structural integrity.
Bourgeois physics, huh? Meaning the buildings stay up because people believe they'll stay up?
Precisely. Nielsen observed that the financial system operates on the same principle of faith. So why not an architectural system?
I mean, it's an argument. I don't know that it's a good one.
On the following page, you come across a few black and white reproductions from Nielsen's own notebooks. One sketch depicts a government ministry shaped like a great inverted pyramid, a hectare in width at the top, balanced atop foundations the size of common apartments. Another depicts a leaning tower wrapped in a dramatic helix. The caption beneath it reads, "The Tower of History."
Wait, but what if the people stop believing and the buildings collapse?
In the corner of one of the reproduced notebook pages, you can make out the following words, written in Nielsen's distinctive slashing script. "A state that has lost the faith of its people has forfeited the right to exist."
Plausible or not, there's something beautiful about this idea. Is there any more?
There is no more. You've reached the outer theoretical limits of communism, and in less than 200 pages.
How very efficient.
If you'd like to read further, may we recommend a brief look at Occidental architecture?
Sure. Okay, where can I find it? Let's put this book away. Okay, that's one book down. Should we go on to another book, or should we try one of these games? And also, obviously, we're going to go back to the reading group before we go to the Feld building. Let's see. Okay, that burned a couple hours. I think it was 2 hours and 20 minutes. So that's good. And now we need to go get ourselves organized. We need to return to the group for discussion. Let's move on to... Let's try The Greatest Innocence.
The Greatest Innocence by João Paulo Salomão Lopes de Fuego. The book is large and heavy.
Say that name 10 times fast. All right, crack open this immense tome.
Browsing through the various chapters, you try your best to understand the ceaseless overflow, the sprawl of names, dates, places, events historical. Most of it ends up as a twisted mass of facts inside your brain. You can do it. It'll be worth it. There's something here.
I like that it was an endurance check. That's funny.
Your educational survey is done. Did you catch any of that? No. Oh well, it's pop quiz time. Let's see what you've learned. This might take a few minutes. You ready?
Sure, why not?
That's the spirit. Here we go. Question 1. Who was the first Innocence? Oh yeah, this is what I was made for.
Encyclopedia, that's right. Okay, all right. That's so. All right, go on. Give me all the hints you got.
Pop quiz is a short examination designed to test your knowledge without any prior warning or announcement. Such exams allow the teacher to assess how thoroughly the students have retained the material at hand. Voila. Now blast that first Innocence.
This is a fantastic response. That I think everybody who was going to ask that question, give me all the hints you got, was not expecting a definition of a pop quiz. That is hilarious.
Thanks for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Dolores Day. Dolores.
All right, Dolores Day.
Incorrect. Dolores Day was the innocence of humanism, internationalism, and the welfare state. She codified parliamentary democracy and created modern institutions. Among these, the moral intern, she was powerful and beautiful on all her icons.
I probably knew that.
Her colors are silver, white, and apricot. And when you think her name, Dolores, stomach acid rises to the back of your throat, and it hurts. You see a flash silver, a wreath, an airport bag, and blonde hair. You don't know why. Another choice, perhaps?
I guess so.
Steer clear of this one. There's something terrible about this one.
What?
A strange sensation of loss. When she left the earth, the dust, and the ice, and the humans. That is unimportant to the quiz. Stop thinking about this.
Okay, Inland Empire. I'm going to heal our morale a little bit here.
Yes, the quiz is impersonal. No need to rouse sensations in yourself at the mention of Dolores Day. Who was the first Innocence? It wasn't Dolores Day.
All right, how about Sola?
Incorrect. Sola was anointed during the previous century and even lived to see the current one. She was an urban planner who spoke her mind and largely left history to its own devices, encouraging people to excel on their own rather than prescribing to a deified model of history. She is often called an anti-Innocence. Sola resigned after an assassination attempt by a Yugo nationalist who blamed her for not taking the side of the left during the turn-of-the-century revolutions. Innocences don't usually resign. Care to try again?
Okay, I suspect this one's also going to be wrong, but the Paracarnassian?
Correct.
Oh.
Nothing much is known about him. It's not even clear that he was a he, but Franco Negro presumed as such and called him Pius. He's depicted as a young man with molten gold pouring out of his mouth. All he spoke was gold. It's said he invented God and equality of men before God. He also introduced the gold standard as a way for measuring people's love for Aurum.
The gold standard?
As the first Innocence, he declared that there should be more of those like him. It is presumed his disciples were the beginning of the Holy Party, the founding party.
So yeah, we're clearly back in big-time world-building mode. This is fascinating, but I'm not sure how much of it is relevant. But still, we're burning time. That's what we need to do.
Question 2. Who was the strongest Innocence? Easy. Everybody knows the answer to this. You, me, anybody.
All right, sure, try again. I trust you've got my back.
An innocence is the highest category of historical personage in the world, a
Jesus.
literal personification of history. Traditionally, an innocence, when anointed, assumes supreme rule over the Occident or the known world in general. At least the parts that matter.
Yeah, so interesting, but I thought you'd give me the answer to the question.
I can do better. Okay, so commonly, an innocence does not enforce his or her power through military power. This is seen as unnecessary. The innocence wins because an innocence can't help but win, for their deeds are inevitabilities. Did this help?
No.
Damn. Dolores.
Pain threshold. You know what? Let's go with it. Dolores Day.
Incorrect again. While she originated many modern institutions, launched several successful expeditions, and was even critical of the Innocentic system itself, and somehow keeps popping up in your mind, she is not often considered the strongest, even though the words most associated with her rule are l'amour, la compassion, la autodiscipline, love, compassion, self-control, which could be seen as facets of strength. Would you like to try again?
Sure.
Please, relax.
How about Franco Negro?
Correct. Named the innocence of militarism, he codified hereditary rule, but at the same time ended serfdom and established the inter-isolari real as the global reserve currency. He also established the concept of the nation.
I wonder what's implied by nation with a capital N.
Franco Negro attempted to solve the rising tensions between the aristocracy and bourgeoisie by building a unified society in which every man has a place and a mission, but at the same time may rise to nobility provided on the strength of his virtue. Question 3. Who was the false innocence? Got it under control. No problem. Solid on this one. It's widespread historical information.
All right, Encyclopedia, you going to be helpful this time? I could use a hint.
Yes, there exists a group called the Founding Party, known as the Holy Party, during the time of the Pericarnacian. This, the world's oldest international organization, spends its time in search of either the re-emergence of the innocents or new members.
All right, I would try actually sighing out loud heavily, but all the filters on my microphone seem to cut that stuff out. So we're just going to say, sigh heavily out loud.
There seems to be a mix-up with the sources. It's not my fault.
Okay, Encyclopedia.
At least it clearly wasn't Dolores Day. She wouldn't be false. She's beautiful.
All right, let's say Dolores.
No, stop thinking it. I said it wasn't her. She was true.
How about Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, Erno, Pastorak?
Correct.
Oh,
there
right.
have been a number of counter or false innocences. Some assumed to have innocentic qualities. Some who just thought so themselves. Occasionally, they have the support of a faction inside the ecclesiastic organization, and accusations of foul play have arisen. The most famous and important of these was Ernest Pasternak. He was into torture, despotism, hymns, cannons, and world conquest, but got defeated and humiliated by Stepan the Despicable of Kedra.
I like how they have these horrible things like torture, despotism, cannons, world congress mixed in with hymns.
Final stretch. You've come so far and learned so much. This is the most important one. Question 4. Who was the greatest innocence? The most important of them all. The most precious to humankind.
Okay, I think this is where we should say something other than Dolores.
I've got it. Honest.
Okay, we're going to say Dolores, but let's see what Encyclopedia has to say. Okay, are you sure you got it this time? I'll bite. Hit me.
Of course, this is my thing. The reason I exist in this world. The correct answer is Franco Negro.
You're absolutely certain of this, Encyclopedia?
0 doubts. While it was actually her.
Yeah, I'm going to say Dolores Day.
Correct. The Mesk might see Franco
Fucking
Negro as the
Encyclopedia.
father of nations, but as of this century, there's been a great shift in attitude. Dolores Day has become widely regarded as the greatest innocence, a most radical change to the whole fabric of the world. Everything from inter-esolary travel to the connected world to 3 consecutive scientific revolutions can be traced back to her. Every decade that passes, she seems less human somehow, and more beautiful, and more beautiful, and more beautiful.
Pain Threshold really has a thing for her. Hey, I just noticed the I and the N are not aligned. I wonder if that's only for Pain Threshold.
Congratulations on finishing the test. The results and your subsequent grade have been calculated. You get
Nope, it looks like they are out of line here too.
a D. Not particularly remarkable, but technically a passing grade. Not that anyone really expected better.
Oh, I'll take a D.
You would have done better if you'd just left Dolores Day for the end. Dial the Dolores Day down a bit.
Damn you, you arrogant book.
What's going on with you?
Thinks it's so smart. God damn.
Okay.
The lieutenant stares at us, his visage unflinching.
You are shouting at an inanimate object, like a real weirdo. No wonder you seem to have trouble with the right answers.
You, book. All right, that was actually much more amusing than I anticipated. We're gonna leave it here. Come back tomorrow when we play some board games. Thank you for your viewership. I love you very much. Please remember to have your pets spayed or neutered.